Hey everybody, how's it going? Cassandra here, Cassandra Hope from Health Style. I am the owner of Health Style, a holistic personal training and nutrition business here in Toronto, as well as life coaching. And I just felt motivated to do a live video today because I have been doing a photo shoot this morning and working on some new social media posts. And it really struck me how far I've come with perfectionism, because as I am tapping into my creativity, which is something I couldn't do for a really long time because of perfectionism, I didn't dial in or tap into my art for over 20 years. And that's crazy. If any of you guys are an artist and you're watching this and you know how often and how much you need to tap into your art to be able to feel like yourself and feel like connected to yourself and happy, to know that that was suppressed inside of me for over 20 years because of perfectionism, you can know how painful that is. And I am an artist to my core. I love writing poetry. I love emotion and moodiness. I drew and painted every single day of my life from the minute I could pick up a crayon until I got rejected from art school. And that was a big one that kind of killed my artistic fire. But now I partake in creativity, or I tap into my creativity through photography, through food, through writing blogs, and just thinking about, creative ways to really try to express what it is that I believe is in my heart that is available to help other people who might be interested in learning from my life and my mistakes. So it kept me, being a perfectionist really kept me from being able to share my message, from growing my business, from being a healthy person, because I was constantly falling off the wagon under the pressure. And from being under constant pressure. And I didn't even know I was a perfectionist until I was probably like early 30s, like 32 is when I probably realized in therapy that I was a perfectionist. And that was a big aha moment. I was like reading a lot on perfectionism and where that comes from, because it was news to me. I thought everybody else had the problem. I was fine. I was like, God, this person is an asshole, and this person did me wrong, and this person needs to change this. And I really wasn't aware of the fact that I was constantly assessing everything, including myself, and looking for the fault in everything. And it kept me so stuck. It kept me so afraid to speak. So examples of perfectionism, looking back, it would be things like staying in really unhealthy relationships that made me really unhappy because I was afraid of people saying, look at her, she can't stick with anybody. Look at her, it must have been her fault that things ended. Who wants to be with her? She's no good. All of these horrible voices I was playing over and over in my head, and it made me stay in relationships. Like I was in one relationship for 6 years where I was really unhappy. Things weren't good. It wasn't a healthy relationship, but I was determined to make it work. You know what I mean? I was determined to, there's no prize at the end of that. There's nobody waiting at the finish line with a big trophy to say, hey, you did it. You stuck it through a horrible relationship where you didn't feel grounded and loved and nurtured and admired and all of these things. Like, that's just crazy, but we do that. That's one example of how I did that. Friendships where I felt really like they're talking shit about me behind my back. For sure they are. It never really feels good when I hang out with them, but I still do. I don't really like the things that we do when we're together, but I still agree to make plans. But the voice in my head, the perfectionism part of me was saying, well, you don't want to disrupt the flow. You don't want to be the one to end this or cause a ripple, emotionally upset anybody, because then you'll be the bad guy. Then you'll be wrong. People will talk about you. And as a perfectionist, this can just make you like lose your breath. You can just go into anxiety and panic just thinking about it. And then in terms of exercise and, business, oh my God, but exercise, I would like schedule my workouts, hire a personal trainer, or join into a group training class. I'd get all my nutrition together and all of my recipes together, and I'd let go of all my vices. I had many, and I'd do okay for a while until I didn't, because I was still dealing with the perfectionism mindset and in denial of the perfectionism mindset. So I was buckling under the pressure. And I think this is a big piece for you guys out there who are thinking about hiring me as a personal trainer or hiring me as a nutritionist, but there's still a lot of that inner critic at play. There's still a lot of self-doubt or a lot of perfectionism at play, and it's happening here and it's happening here, and you're like, I know I need the information, I know I need the structure, I know I need the insight and the coaching and the support, but is this stuff being addressed? Are there tools and strategies for acknowledging the pee under the mattress, the seated root, belief systems and thought patterns that are keeping you stuck? Are there things that you can do and ways that you can work through that, so that when you do gain the coaching and you do gain the knowledge on nutrition and exercise and everything, that you don't self-sabotage? And self-sabotage happens for so many different reasons. It can be perfectionism, self-doubt, it can be, just belief systems and inner critic inside of us that is telling us all of these horrible things that just make us buckle and crush our goals. So I had to let's talk about why this happened. So I would say for me, this happened because I personally grew up in a home with a very mentally ill and physically ill mother who wasn't able to nurture me and wasn't able to protect me the way that I needed to be as a young child. So I was constantly trying to find a way to behave and speak that would yield love from my mom. And looking back, that's really sad, but it is what it is. And I constantly was monitoring the voice inside my head, what I wanted to say, if I wanted to joke around, if I wanted to, do a dance in the house and have my mom watch me. These are all things that I ended up being afraid to do, and that's really not good as a young child. You want to be, uninhibited and creative and free. But I doubted everything that I did because I knew, eventually I learned that it would be met with critique or anger, and it just made me really not trust myself and not feel grounded and not feel safe. So I had major social anxiety. It was really difficult for me to partake in a conversation or contribute to a conversation or put art out there and feel good about the things that I was putting out there, to choose relationships, or even feel like if I liked somebody, oh God, would they like me back? No way. Like I would go for the easy relationship, somebody who I knew would just be easy to deal with, not put myself out there for being crushed or rejected. And that is freaking sad because I was amazing. I was an amazing young girl, an amazing teenager, as we all are, and that self-doubt, man, it is such a buzzkill. It really keeps us small. So I went to drugs and alcohol because that increases your dopamine, it increases your serotonin, it makes you more uninhibited, and people were connecting with me and they would pay attention to what I had to say and would tell me just how amazing I was. And I used drugs and alcohol as a portal to self-acceptance for a long time. But if any of you guys have, dabbled in drugs and alcohol, you'll know that there's always this kind of gremlin behind you. You might feel good, but there's something dark waiting for you behind you at all times. And it's not authentic. It's not real connection, real love, real calm and peace. And that is what I craved, but I had no idea how to do it. So I would say it is probably my health deteriorating to the point where I was broken that made me start to rebuild myself from the inside out. So my illness really did become my gift. I was so sick, and I mean so sick, that I couldn't go out. I couldn't be social. I couldn't eat. I couldn't go to my family's house. I couldn't travel. I couldn't sustain working in my business and servicing my clients properly. I had no energy. So you can imagine when everything broke down to that place, I had no choice but to rebuild. And I had to rebuild authentically. I knew that. No more bullshit. So I started reading books. I started going to therapy. I started having really honest and difficult conversations with people, something I was so afraid to do in the past. But it works. It works. And for me, God, there's a lot more to that than just that. But for me, there were those fundamental things that needed to happen in order for me to heal. And I'm not saying that's what is going to be the recipe for my clients' healing or for you potentially to heal. But I can say that it was always putting one foot in front of the other, never giving up my curiosity, never giving up my willingness and openness to learn about my mistakes, the things that kept me small, that kept me stuck, and trying new ways to work through them. That is what has now gotten me to a place at 36 where I am working very well with my perfectionism. Notice how I'm not saying that I'm no longer a perfectionist. I think our demons, they stay with us. They make up who we are. They're a big piece of who we are, but we have to learn how to work with them, how to acknowledge them, and kind of move away from the behaviors that keep us stuck, right? So I wrote a little list here. There were a few things that I do now to work through being a perfectionist. So number one is learning what perfectionism is. Do any of you guys know what perfectionism is? If you do, because it's different for everybody, leave a comment in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys identify with as perfectionism, or feel that perfectionism is, because it's different for everybody. Nobody's wrong, but sometimes we just have to be able to say it out loud and acknowledge it to even begin the road to recovery. Questioning where perfectionism was playing a role in my decision-making and thought patterns. And I mean, it was everywhere. It was everywhere. From what I was going to wear that day, to what I was going to eat, to the million times I would look in the mirror and dissect my body and critique my body, to the friendships I had, to what I chose to post on social media, to the type of dog I bought. I mean, it was everywhere. It was absolutely like the dominant player in who I was. So I had to really learn, where is perfectionism making decisions in my life? Where is it showing up? Acknowledging that it is a part of who I am, and that it played an important part in my role in survival, right? It played a big role as a child in a really abusive, unhealthy home. But I had to acknowledge that I no longer needed that. I don't need perfectionism to keep me feeling safe anymore. I can operate from my true self now. I'm safe. I can show up for myself. I can create boundaries. I can end relationships. I can create anything I want. And that conviction comes from being wise and mature and older, and working through the tough stuff, not skipping it, but working through it. My inner critic, I will have you know, my inner critic is still very strong. She's less dominant, but I still notice her. Her name is Sandy, and she's a bitch. And I learned that through my work with my life coach, Billy Anderson of the Courage Crusade. Check out his website. He is amazing, an amazing values assessment that's free on his website. And you can learn a lot about your happiness and your sadness in your life just by that values assessment alone. Never mind his book, Your Comfort Zone is Killing You. It's really helped me a lot. But I have had to learn how to acknowledge her and how to have a conversation with her, and how to let her know politely when it's time to hit the road, and that I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to step up and do something different this time. And that's scary. It is really scary. I'm not going to pretend that it's not. But we can do it. We will survive. Acknowledging is half of the battle. I will have you know that as well. Maybe even 3/4 of the battle. For me, anyways. how has my life improved since acknowledging and learning to maneuver through perfectionism? Well, I'm no longer looking for a dopamine reward or some type of dopamine reward from unhealthy actions or behaviors. So drugs, alcohol, unhealthy relationships, adrenaline rushes, things that put me in really vulnerable and scary, unsafe situations just because I needed to feel that connection. I needed to feel happy, a minute of a release of the anxiety and tension. I'm now using healthy ways to do that, and it's a different kind of energy. It's still a positive reward, emotional reward, but it's calmer. It's a bit more of like a smooth vibe as opposed to these peaks and valleys and ups and deep downs. It's like okay, I'm eating healthy. This feels good. I feel satiated. I feel calm. My emotions are balanced. My blood sugar is balanced. I'm good. Okay, I'm exercising, and man, do I ever feel endorphins afterwards, and that gives me energy. I'm having beautiful conversations with somebody who I trust and who is vulnerable with me as well. And there's a give and take in energy, and we love each other, as opposed to two emotionally needy, very sad people trying to grasp on to anything in a conversation to lift ourselves up. And it was based in bullshit, I believe, in my own experience. I'm no longer in denial. That's a big one. I know who I am. I know my weaknesses, and I have conviction in myself that I can work through my triggers and be okay. Self-explanatory. This is a big one. I remember this one woman who I admired so much. I was working with her. She was a client, and she was a professor, and I just loved how grounded she was. She was many years older than me, probably like 20, 25 years older than me, and I was like, man, you've been through a lot. She left a marriage. She left her child with her ex-husband to be able to go and follow her dreams. She acknowledged that she's a queer woman and dabbled in relationships of different sexes and followed her dreams. And I was like, you are one badass chick. Like, what? And I wanted to know, how do you work through the darkness when you start to feel it come on? How do you work through the lows, the sadness, the depression? Because I identified as a depressed, sad, mentally ill, broken person. I live there all the time. So I was like, how do you go through that when you can feel it coming on? And she said, I just know it's gonna pass. I honor it. I move through it. You get still, you get quiet. You can question, why is it here? Feel safe in the instability because you know you're gonna get through it. And that was crazy to me. I was like, what? I don't know if any of you guys identify with what I'm saying, but it was such a mind-blowing thing to feel like I can move through that. I can get on the other side of it and be okay. Well, what about when the next wave comes? Well, yeah, the waves come pretty often sometimes, and then they dissipate. They become less and less. And when they do come now, because it's human nature to go through the peaks and valleys, definitely they're not as deep and they're not as often, but it is part of being human. I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's see how long this one lasts. And I know it's going to be okay. And I'm not so scared. I'm not so terrified and trying to claw on to things that will help me feel like it's not happening, to try and pull out of it. Breathe through it. Move through it. It's going to be okay. So I know, some of the things that I'm saying are a little cryptic, a little broad, maybe way up in there in the ethers. I'm trying to be as specific as possible, but also leave room for interpretation, because the message, the core message, I hope, is enough to help you to maybe realize where perfectionism is at play for you. Where it is maybe keeping you stuck and making you feel unworthy or broken, or constantly in these cyclical patterns that are not yielding the type of life that you want to have. and it looks different for everybody. So I'm trying not to be too specific. But anyways, I hope this little video and bit of vulnerability has served to inspire you or to help you feel less alienated, less alone, less broken. I believe that we used to spend a lot of time in a tribal community sharing a lot of this stuff with people all the time. And we had a lot of support from our elders and from other people who were quite wise that could help us move through these big life issues. And we've moved so far away from that now. It's very rare that I believe, I don't see it very often, where people have the support network to be vulnerable and to share their fears and to share their mishaps or big life issues, and to have somebody who says, I hear you. That's a real thing. And I've been there too. And this is what helped me. Maybe you can try this, or just talk to me. People need to just be able to speak and feel understood and unconditionally loved. So I hope that you have people that you can do that with. And if you don't, I hope that you find them soon. I've been very fortunate to cultivate a new tribe, my chosen tribe, my chosen family, people who I know I am safe to share my vulnerabilities, my fears, and all the good stuff with, and still feel loved. So know that you are loved no matter what, no matter how dark it is or whatever you're going through. Know that you are eternally loved by the universe, by your higher self, by the planet. Man, that's a good feeling to know that when you figure that out. And I hope you guys are having a great Sunday. Let's try and lighten it up, eh? I'm going to go and cook some healthy food and chill with my puppy. I'll see you guys later. Ciao.